I'm set to go. And where's the advance button? That one. Okay. Thank you. Hi. Again, here I am. I am the painter in the Parade of Trades. So I'm going to try to make sure I get you guys out on time for lunch. My name is Cynthia Tsao. I currently serve as the Director of Lean Strategy at Consigli Construction in Boston, Massachusetts. My co-author is Helena Lidolo from Lulea, and we're going to talk to you about the development of a materials management strategy to enable continuous workflow on site. So first I wanted to start out by why are we doing this research? I have been coaching projects for a number of years now, and I have lots of colleagues who act as coaches, either as consultants to project teams or within general contractors, within design firms. They're coaching. And in this capacity of coaching, I've noticed that one of the things that we struggle with is all these project teams are eager to, okay, but I want to get back to work, right? And so they only have enough patience to learn a little bit about the last planner sometimes when we start, right? And so I'll be lucky if I can get the last planner moving on a project. But meanwhile, there's this other facet, which is the materials management. And the materials management is often neglected in lean coaching because of the push to hurry up and get away, leave so I can get back to my work, okay? So I noticed this, I talked to my colleagues who do this work. Yes, we're definitely helping people coach on last planner, but sometimes this materials management is neglected, but only in cases where the projects, they have a limitation of space. If they don't have space on the site, that project team focuses on the materials management, right? And those of you guys who are at IGLC Boston last year, some of you visited the Wentworth Beatty Hall project. And I want to point out to you, you see over here, that was an almost no space place. So the project team very much studied materials management. On the bottom, on the floor, you see the word TGG. That stands for TG Gallagher, the plumbing contractor. They broke up the site and said, each trade contractor, you have this space. This is your space, okay? So materials management was managed very well. So with that, we thought, why don't we try to think about how do we try to figure out how to better integrate materials management so that when we are lean coaches, we're trying to bring last planner, what else can we do to integrate the two so we don't neglect both of them, especially for projects that don't have this exterior pressure of having limited laydown site. Our conceptual framework, this is just a series of thoughts that we had that, yes, we are advocating for material deliveries that are pull-based systems, kitting, prefabrication. We're very much, Helena and I are very much into prefabrication. We came to this research actually with a push for prefabrication first, as opposed to materials management as a whole. And when you have materials deliveries managed in that way, production system design, you introduce standardization and repeatability. And when you do that, then you can reduce work variation errors, and then you have the ability to have learning curve benefits. When you do that, then you get generated improvements such as installation quality and productivity. This is the framework that we are starting to see, sort of why is it that we want to push for this kind of management. And also, we also wanted to recognize that there is a spectrum of off-site to on-site built work processes. A lot of people say, prefab is good, right? Yeah, absolutely, we agree. But there's a whole spectrum of from processing raw materials all the way, components, engineer to order, make to order, assembler, etc. types of products. So this is our conceptual framework that we are working within. And so when we decided to say, well, how about develop our methodology? Let's say, let's try to develop we wanted to focus on how can we help project teams determine what to prefab versus not, okay? And then I said, okay, well, I have these projects at my disposal. Let's come up with a template, and I will distribute them to my project teams, right? And ask them to fill it out so that we can help figure out, did they pick the right products to prefab, or did they miss some opportunities for prefab? So what do you think, what kind of response I got? None. All right, they're too busy. They didn't want to fill it out, right? So I thought, okay, let's revise that approach. And actually we then started thinking we need to revise our perspective. Let's not talk about just prefab or not prefab. Let's think about where key materials should sit on the spectrum of on-site to on-site built work processes. And we also slowed ourselves down. We're going to focus on one case study at a time. We're going to develop it slowly, right? So that we can do plan, do, check, act. We're going to try methodology, improve on it, okay? And then I thought, okay, so I'm going to look across the spectrum of, conceivably we have about 60 live projects at least at any given time. So I'm looking across my projects. Which project team could I work with? And I picked one. This is called, this project that we use for our case study is the UMass Memorial Center Healthcare Project. And in that project, the client initially said to us, please help us renovate our bed towers, but you may only take out 4 rooms at a time. No materials laid down anywhere. 4 rooms at a time. So because of that, that's where my company, and in fact, it's actually before I joined Conceptual February 2015. Before I came, they had already started working on this kitting effort. Okay, so the project team had already started developing, so that's why we picked it, and I used it as a basis in the fund to develop this methodology. So what Helena and I started doing is we started trying to think about, let's think about everything we can do that would influence materials management strategy. Let's think of everything that could possibly influence it. So we expanded it out, and we started developing a spreadsheet. And this is the excerpt from our paper. And actually, this table is very, very large. We thought of everything we could that will influence it. And we analyzed it for about 10 items. And the way we picked the items with this project team was, what were the 10 bulkiest items? What were the most difficult to manage items? And in the paper, we focus on putting an expert for one type of material. The material is called wall protection. Who here is familiar with wall protection? Show of hands? Okay. So wall protection, for those of you who are not familiar, it is long and bulky. It can be purchased in 4 feet by 10 foot sizes. I'm sorry, convert it for yourselves. Those are a metric. They are heavy. They are hard to manage. You cannot ding them. And they are delivered in crates. Actually, this standing up crate is not the delivery crate. The one on the ground is the one that's how it's delivered. Okay? And this is an example of the workers trying to take out these large sheets. They're very hard to manage. They need to cut them to a certain size and then get them ready, for instance. And for this material, we have, I'll just talk about a couple different facets that characterizes this material in terms of our installation. There's color variation. There are 4 different colors in the patient rooms. There are 3 different colors in the corridors. There are 12 to 14 sizes amongst the 4 colors in each patient room. The variation grows and grows and grows. So it becomes very hard for these group of workers to think about how to manage them, and we started calculating different elements, the procurement rate and delivery, and we thought about how does the off-site location materials process, how's the delivery truck managing it, what's the on-site location material processing, and also in this case there are union rules that affects. Only carpenters can move this material. You cannot allow laborers to touch the material because it's a finished material. That complicates things. And then there's staging conditions. There's equipment needed for install, space needed for staging installation, labor needed for staging installation rate. So this is just to give you a perspective on how we try to analyze these materials. Meanwhile, we also started thinking about that we want to develop a prototype for sort of daily materials management. Helena helped develop this sort of chart to sort of identify, well, we need to maybe make sure to make a distinction between where are we storing our materials, and then where do we stage the materials, how are we shaking it out, and where are we finally installing, for instance. And meanwhile, on some of my other project teams, I'm actually working with them in those kinds of things for managing daily work planning. We also do material staging. I'm trying to help project teams understand equipment storage, etc. So we have a lot of work in alignment. But then we submitted the paper to IGLC. And the reviewer said, hey, can you explain why you make a distinction between storage and staging? So we're like, okay, that's a pretty good point. And I wanted to point out to you, for instance, on one of my projects, I was walking a job site with the superintendent. He's the guy in the hard hat. That's his daily stand-up, his daily huddle with the foreman. And we were walking around, and we found a pallet of stuff. And he went up to it, and he wrote something on it. Right there, okay? And here is the close-up of it. That material would not be installed for 3 to 4 months. So he was going, why? Why are you delivering it to us? Because we can't handle it, right? So these are the things. So we want to make a distinction, and we propose that those of you who are much more studied in this work, if you have other theoretical work that you know about that make the decision between storage and staging, please let us know. But this is for the purpose of this paper. We just said, well, storage is materials not delivered just in time. It may be stored on site indefinitely and moved multiple times before installation. Staging, meanwhile, if you think about a stage, you're getting it ready for its performance. Staging materials do not need to be handled a second time before installation. Typically, materials are delivered just in time, which can be better translated from Japanese as at this right time. So our next research steps is we're going to, try to refine now. Remember those we expanded it very largely, then now we're going to contract it back to what we kind of think is sort of the crux of what's minimum. We want to try to create a worksheet that is easy for project teams to use, and but it's comprehensive. It will help the project teams figure out which materials they want to manage on the spectrum. We invite you, the community, to join us, though. We would be happy to share our spreadsheet. We would like feedback. Did we miss anything? Because we want to be making sure we get all the details. We would be happy to hear any recommendations for our next steps. And if you're interested in trying any of these approaches out yourself, go at it, have fun. I want to acknowledge the Conceptual project team at this project. Ricky Gallo was instrumental in developing, remember that kitting image I showed you? He worked on that without me, right? They developed it before I came on board, and Sam Gerard was the project engineer who worked with me in filling out this for this research. With that, I'm going to turn it over to questions. I'm going to leave that slide up, and those of you in the front can read it. But that's how we go. So, Romano, back here. I would definitely, I try to sneak in tech whenever they don't realize it, right? And so in essence, this is sort of a part of my big goal. I want to get them familiar and used to this. They weren't planning on takt time with a takt time basis, right? But I wanted to start at least getting them used to using these boards to visualize where the materials are, where the equipment is, right? And then so when we introduce it, then it'll do very well. I'll just mention I had a project team in which I just started with tech, and I said, hey, let's everybody plan with a 2-day, duration. Everybody do that, and they belly ached, but that project went really, really well, and was a public project, right? So everybody's amazed by, tact, but I never use the word tact in that case. Glenn?